It's another Saturday when we bring you your favorite security and safety tonic on television, Security Watch Africa. Welcome to your program and welcome to the. Thanks for remaining tuned to your station, the Africa Independent Television. My name still remains Patrick Abambu. Today we'll be discussing two very important issues that affect the security, basically in Nigeria and Africa. And we're expecting to have two guests, one here in the studio and one already there online via Zoom, ready to talk. My friend, my brother, doctor, I will call him, David Otto is already there to join us to look at the issues that are very important, looking at the counter-terrorism fight in Nigeria and what is happening in the Central Democratic Republic of Congo and with the situation with the M33. What M23, I mean, and what is happening and the impact it has for Africa. But that will be after this report by Elizabeth Tanko from the Defense Headquarters.
Despite the controversy of visa denial by the Canadian government of some Nigerian delegates to the Invictus Games 2025 in Vancouver, Canada, the Team Nigeria, who were without their team leader and physiotherapist, and other high-flying athletes, won 1 gold, 1 silver, and 4 bronze medals, returned back to Nigeria. This Wednesday, the Chief of Defense Staff, CDS, General Christopher Gwabin Musa, warmly welcomed the victorious team at the Defense Headquarters. In his remarks, General Musa lauded the participants as national heroes, emphasizing that their participation was not just about sports, but a testament of their strength and courage.
Today, we gather to honor our Nigerian participants who have not only competed but have also inspired us all with their determination and strength. To our brave participants, you have shown the world that it means what it means to rise above adversity. Your participation in these games is a reflection of your unwavering commitment to excellence, even in the face of challenges. Each of you has demonstrated the core values of the Nigerian forces: courage, discipline, and resilience. You have not only represented Nigeria on the global stage, but have also become ambassadors of hope and perseverance. Your stories of triumph are a source of inspiration to millions both at home and abroad, especially to our service personnel that are out there in the field, toiling day and night, fighting insurgency, terrorism, and all acts of criminality. They are all proud of you also.
The CDS reaffirmed the military's commitment to its personnel, regardless of the challenges they face, and went further to thank the Nigerian government and all stakeholders for their support.
The Invictus Games remind us of the transformative power of sports in the rehabilitation and recovery of wounded, injured, and sick-serving personnel. You've heard what they've said. Some of them never thought they could do any other thing when they got injured. They thought life was over, but this gave them a new lease of life. And to all those who are also serving, know that whatever it is that happens to them, the Nigerian Armed Forces and the federal government will never abandon their own. I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to the Nigerian government, especially Mr. President, for always being there for members of the armed forces, the National Security Advisor, the Ministers of Defense, and all stakeholders who supported our team's participation in this game.
Earlier in his welcome address, the Director of Sports, Defense Headquarters, Air Vice Marshal Nanjum Kumzi, while thanking the CDS, revealed that despite the setbacks of visa denial of some participants, which dampened the team's morale upon their departure, Team Nigeria participated in over 6 sporting events.
The team was already demoralized and in low spirit at their departure. In fact, for some of the events, the team could not constitute a full team without drafting those that were not prepared. With all the discouragement, Team Nigeria remained resolute and made history, which today we are gathered here to celebrate and welcome our heroes back home. The Chief of the Defense Staff, sir, we, the Nigerian team, want to sincerely thank you from the bottom of our hearts for granting us this almost once in a lifetime opportunity.
The captain of the team, Captain Vincent Tapere, expressed gratitude to General Musa and the armed forces for giving them a renewed sense of hope, with some of the participants sharing their experience.
Sir, we cannot thank you enough for this privilege that we have received. And on behalf of wounded, injured, and sick personnel of the armed forces, sir, we want to say a very big thank you to you once again this morning. And we pray that God will continue to guide your path into greatness, sir.
I won a silver medal from City Volleyball. I won a medal from City Volleyball.
Over 130 insurgents and their family members so far surrendered to the Armed Forces of Nigeria. The Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Gwabin Musa, disclosed that 789 ex-combatants will be reintegrated into the society after thorough re-radicalization process. He said this through his representative, Air Vice Marshal Sayo Olatunde, Chief of Defense Policy and Plans, at the stakeholders' meetings of Operation Safe Corridor.
Operation Safe Corridor was initiated due to the mass surrender of Boko Haram and Islamic State of West African Province members, induced by well-coordinated operations by all stakeholders. This has led to over 120,000 insurgents and their families' members surrendering since the inception of the program.
He urged all stakeholders at the meeting to actively be involved in the reintegration process to ensure lasting peace and security in the country.
I must emphasize that all stakeholders must be actively involved in this reintegration process to forestall recidivism. Do not also forget the importance of this meeting in ensuring lasting peace and security in our country.
Elizabeth Thanko, reporting for Security Watch Africa, Abuja.
Welcome back. Yes, it's quite important to note the exploits of the Invictus game participants. You can see that Nigeria, in spite of the challenges and the whoos and cries over visa, some have claimed 70 people, but I'm able to tell you that it's not down to that number. In fact, just 25 persons did apply. Unfortunately, only 14 were given visa, and sadly, the other important persons like physiotherapy was not there, and so many were not there to provide services for the team. But at the end, they came back victorious. Anyway, to the topic of today, we'll be looking at how Nigeria has been boosting the counter-terrorism fight, particularly in the Northwest, and with the recent visit by the Chief of the Army Staff, Lieutenant General Olufemi Oluyede. Recently, he was in the Northwest, and from report, we had the great report, exploits that have been conducted there, that have been carried out there by the armed forces, the troops of the armed forces of Nigeria. And like I said, also we'll be looking at the situation between the DR Congo and allegedly Rwanda, what is happening over there. Online already we have my friend David Otto. How are you doing?
Thank you very much, Mr. Patrick. Thank you to your viewers. Thank you for having me.
Okay. Yes, I believe that you can hear me clearly. Then,
yes, I can hear you very clearly.
All right.
You
heard what I talked about there briefly before we come to our guest here in the studio. Let's start with Nigeria. I'm sure you must have been hearing about what is happening in the Northwest, particularly because you are an international counter-terrorism analyst and experts. You have talked so much about the need for Nigeria to improve the counter-terrorism efforts, particularly in the Northwest. And the Chief of the Army Staff just came back from touring for 1 week, tour of most of the hotspots over there. What would you say briefly on that?
Well, I think, Mr. Patrick, I think it's important to underline that the Nigerian military has played a very significant role in ensuring that the capabilities of Boko Haram, ISIS, or ISWAP, as you call them, the Islamic State of West Africa Province, and indeed other terrorist organizations that operate within the likes of Ansaru before. Their capabilities have been diminished by the military. We have seen a lot of ground troops, take over territories that the insurgents had occupied. These insurgents have been driven to the fringes of the borders. They've taken advantage of the fact that Nigeria has extensive boundaries with other countries, the likes of Chad, Cameroon, Niger, and so on. But I think what is critical, Patrick, is the fact that the military, has also been very instrumental in ensuring that there is a safe passage in which those who wish to surrender. I think they mentioned about 120,000 members and associated members, in quotes, have been, have surrendered through Operation Safe Corridor, which is a significant progress that has been made by the Nigerian military. But of course, this goes without saying that the Nigerian military has suffered a lot of casualty. And of course, this brings us very closely to the fact that some of the ways of boosting the morale of the military has been to take part in games like the Invictus Games, for those that are injured, as a result of engaging in insurgency. But also, gives confidence to the military that those who are fighting in the front, in the war front, that the Nigerian military leadership, has some kind of a rehabilitation and reintegration process also for the military, who are taking part in this battle. But I think what is critical is the fact that, Mr. Patrick, the military understands very well that it is not the only stakeholder in this war against insurgency, and that is some sort of a whole society approach. They are calling on other agencies. I'm not ignoring the Air Force, the Nigerian Navy, the Nigerian police, the intelligence agencies, civil society. It's a community and people's approach, and this is one thing which the Nigerian army has distinguished itself in terms of recognizing that it cannot and should not be the only one to defeat insurgency in the country. So I think despite the fact that we've been experiencing Boko Haram and ISIS for the past 2 decades, I think the progress that has been made so far is encouraging, and more grace.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Let me bring in my guest here in the studio, Chimezie Anyadike, who's a social commentator, to look recently, like I said, my question to him, the chief of army staff visited in Northwest. From the reports you got or you've been getting, what would you say about that?
Yeah, I think it's a good one. And one of the things that usually empowers in a structure where you have management and the employees and everything, there is something about management reaching down to actively engage in the activities in one way or the other, the activities of those that are the lower staff, the subordinates. It gives some kind of morale. It boosts the morale that despite the fact that management is high up there, they still have time to come and engage and know our welfare and then encourage us, participate in some of the activities. We have find out from us what we are doing and all of that and how it's going. It's a very huge source of encouragement to boost the morale of the troops, and I think that it's something that is laudable and should be encouraged more and more.
All right, thank you. Yeah, let me come back to you, David. You're an expert, and for so many years you have been following up with the transactions, who call it, with what is happening with the NGOs activities in Nigeria, particularly in the northeast. And recently, we were told, in fact, everybody listened to the American senator accused the USAID of actually funding some of these activities of terrorists. What would be your take on that?
Mr. Patrick, let me go down the memory lane. I've been, very much involved in researching Boko Haram and its activities in the Northeast for a very long time, since the early 2010s, from there on. And, I've also interacted very much with both civil society organizations, INGOs, as they call them, international non-governmental organizations, but also local NGOs. Besides, I've also had very good and deep interactions with the Nigerian military and the Nigerian police, in regards to the insurgency that is going on in the Northeast and throughout the country. And, in relation to what we're talking about now, there has always been, concern and cases whereby the military has accused international organizations and local NGOs that are linked to international organizations, of, playing an adversarial role in either aiding or abetting the activities of Boko Haram, or perhaps, shielding Boko Haram. There has been numerous accusations that the military has levied, but for the fact that, the military has been very, very much unable to find concrete evidence. Now, if you want to jump to what we're experiencing now, a U.S. Senate, in the name of, Congressman Scott Perry comes up and says that an INGO like USAID, which is quite reputational, has been sponsoring terrorist organizations, and he names the likes of ISIS in the Khorasan province, ISIS in Syria, and then talks about Boko Haram. That is a major concern, because now this is coming from an authority. It's not just coming from anyone. I mean, you could imagine if a Senate House member in the Nigerian government woke up one morning in the Senate House and said that Nigeria is sponsoring terrorism, or a Nigerian organization is sponsoring terrorism in the US. This is going to be an outburst, from the US government. The US is involved and has been championing since 9/11 the global war on terror. And one of the speeches that, the president then made, George Bush, very clearly, was that they will clamp down and they will not distinguish between those who take part directly in terrorism and those who sponsor terrorism. So if a US Senate is coming up in the Senate House, in the Congress, and says that US aid funds that have been given to it, for other activities have been used to sponsor terrorism, this is a serious allegation that requires a very serious investigation, not just by the Nigerian government, which is involved, but also by the US government. Remember, Boko Haram still exists, Patrick. And if the US senator is saying that Boko Haram has received funding from USAID, then of course the implication is that some of that money could still be existing, and some of that money could still, be in the process of being used, to target Nigerian soldiers, to target the Nigerian population. So it is an existential threat. So I think what one needs to do, and I think I applaud the Nigerian Senate for what it has done, to immediately assemble all its, agencies and heads of its agencies, to come up with a strategy on how to deal with this issue. They need to investigate. They need to dig down into the activities of USAID. Now, I am not saying, because, from a professional point of view, I am not saying that the USAID has not been doing very good activities. I mean, people who are murderers, are also can also do good. But what I'm saying is that if that kind of allegation is made, the information has to be verified. the authority who made that information has to be verified, and this can only be done through an investigation. And I believe that the Nigerian government, should immediately, and I think they've done that, call upon the U.S. Authorities to investigate to ensure that Boko Haram is not still using the alleged funds that were given to it, perhaps by U.S. aid, according to the U.S. congressman. So this calls for immediate investigation, because this could simply allude to state sponsor of terrorism, and this is something which I believe the U.S. does not want on its character, or perhaps on its image as we speak.
Yeah, we're spoken there. In fact, yeah, I saw you nodding your head when he was making his comments. Yes, do you agree with what he said about Nigerian government taking action?
I agree totally, because first and foremost, Nigeria is a sovereign entity tasked with the responsibility of protecting itself from internal and external threats. Now, a ranking member of the United States Senate made an accusation concerning the activities of USAID, and one of the accusations affected and still affects the territorial and anthropological integrity of the Nigerian state. And I want to also believe that this ties in with a widely circulated interview on Al Jazeera by the Chief of Defense Staff, General Musa, Christopher Musa, where he also made a statement, but it was not it wasn't an accusation. He simply made a statement, asked a question, that anytime we get, they encounter some of these insurgents or terrorists of either Boko Haram origin or ISWAP origin, or some of these factions that have been terrorizing the northeast and northwest of the nation, that anytime you arrest or you get some of them coming to surrender, they always come in, some of them come in with stacks of hard currency.
Yeah.
And the question he asked, he was asked that is there any fact-based whatever. He said no, that is a simple thing. All he wants the international community to do is follow the money. How do these guys get these monies? How have they been able to sustain themselves for 15 years? And immediately he said that. I was like, wait, that's true. It seems as though, despite the best efforts of the Nigerian government, despite the best efforts of our security infrastructure, it seems that these guys appear to be getting stronger and stronger. So I think that I agree entirely with what he said, that the Nigerian government must set up a high-powered delegation committee, whatever it is, to investigate, to liaise with the American government to truly find out how the supposed activities of the USAID has been threatening the existence and the security of the Nigerian state.
Yeah, thank you so much. And in fact, that statement you said about the Chief of Defense Staff was made at the 2024 Security Watch Africa event in Qatar, Doha,
yeah.
And he did talk about it following a question that was asked by a Security Watch Africa team about the role of NGOs, because we have seen it and we can attest to the fact that, yes, the NGOs actually play a role in what is happening there. But let me go back again to Dr. Otto there. Yes, there's no way we can sign off from here without talking about what is happening in the area you have also studied so well, the DR Congo and the Central Africa and the East Africa situation. What is happening there? Because we are threatened here even because it could spell doom to even other parts of Africa.
Well, Mr. Patrick, I mean, as we speak, what is going on is that there is a clash between the DRC Congo government troops and the troops of a rebel group, known as M23. And M23 has been accused of being an arm of the Rwandan government. I mean, this is from a UN report, which actually, UN experts, did make a conclusion that M23 is backed up by about 4,000 Rwandan troops. Now, to corroborate that, there was an interview that, the Rwandan president, gave. And when he was asked if actually Rwandan troops are in DRC Congo, he said he didn't know. Now, diplomatically, my interpretation and perhaps that of many would be that he's the commander in chief of the Rwandan armed forces. And if he doesn't know, either it is that he's not in control of his forces, which, it's unlikely, or he's effectively saying that, yes, they are there, because if they were not there, he would have said they are not there. So these rebel groups, have, in the past couple of weeks now, overtaken two major cities, in the eastern part of DRC, which is Goma and Bukuva, which is just simply around the northern and southern part of Kivu, a very, very mineral, extremely rich region, along the DRC, Rwanda, and Burundian borders. So it is a major clash. Now, Patrick, how did this come about? Remember, after 1994, during the genocide, the then Hutu government was chased out by a rebel group that was then a rebel group, of course, that was led by President Kagame himself. Yeah,
sorry. Let me cut in there. Unfortunately, we are being asked that we have to end it here today because of other program. But please, if you permit me, next week we are going to talk about this seriously, because I know that the situation there is still playing out. I'm so sorry, because we have thought we could exhaust this thing today, but I'm sorry, next week we'll continue with this. Please, thank you so much for agreeing to that. Yes, fortunately, we are being asked to go. Other programs will continue, but it's been a pleasure. Next week again, we'll have to look at all these issues, because it troubles us as Africans, and let's see how it can affect Nigeria and prevent it. Thank you so much for being on the program.
Thank you.
Once again. Thank you, David Otto, for joining us again. Thank you. See you again next week. Until next week, when we'll bring another exciting edition of this program, I say thanks for staying tuned, and bye for now.